Welcome to a side of Venezuela that most travel guides never mention. We're about to lift the curtain on 12 customs, quirks, and downright weird realities that might leave you speechless. Sure, Venezuela is known for its jaw-dropping landscapes, but behind the postcard views lurk surprising social taboos, modern myths, and bizarre day-to-day challenges. If you stick around till the end, you'll discover how these unexpected rules shape life in a country full of natural wonders, chaotic charm, and plenty of hidden secrets. Taboo. #12. Currency chaos and the black market. Venezuela was once one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America, riding high on its oil riches. But over the past decade or so, the national currency, the bolivar, has taken a nosedive like nobody's business. Locals joke that it's worth less than monopoly money, except it's not always a joke. Inflation went off the charts, with some real-life horror stories describing wheelbarrows of cash just to buy groceries. Even if that exact image is exaggerated, the sentiment is real. The currency has faced massive devaluation, forcing Venezuelans to get creative. One of the biggest taboos here is openly discussing the black market exchange rate. Sure, everyone knows it exists. You can't survive on official rates alone because they might say $1 is worth, say, X bolivares, but on the street, through Facebook groups, Telegram chats, or whisper networks, it's worth way more. Locals keep track of these rates on websites like Dollar Today, but if you stroll around flaunting your knowledge of the black market, or worse, suggesting you want to partake, you might get side-eye or even a stern warning. Despite the hush-hush vibe, foreigners who visit often end up tangled in these currency games. They'll show up with dollars or euros, hoping to exchange at a fair rate, only to find that banks offer a rate so low, it's almost insulting. Then, someone quietly suggests, "Psst, I know a friend who can give you triple that rate." You see the problem? If you do it, you're technically breaking some rules or walking a fine line. Yet not doing it means getting financially burned. Locals themselves face the same dilemma daily: how to stretch a salary that might be under $10 a month at the official rate. Adding to the confusion, the government redenominated the currency multiple times, slicing zeros off like it was no big deal. For instance, it went from the Bolivar Fuerte to the Bolivar Soberano, removing zeros each time. People lost track. Was it a million or 1,000 or a trillion? This chaos is so ingrained in daily life that Venezuelans have developed a dark sense of humor about it. You'll see memes about entire paychecks buying just a cup of coffee, if you can even find real coffee, that is. Why is it taboo? Because publicly acknowledging that you use or trust unofficial currency channels can get you in trouble, or at least make you appear suspicious. Some older folks who remember better times consider it shameful. Others warn that authorities might see you as fueling the black market. Meanwhile, everyday people do it quietly to survive, and no one talks about it too openly. Imagine paying for a dinner with a giant stack of bolivares because the notes have so little value, or going to an ATM that only dispenses a pittance, forcing you to run around to 5 different machines just to afford basic groceries. It's a bizarre scene, but it's the reality. Hence taboo #12. Talk carefully about currency or risk stepping on a financial landmine in a place where money has turned into a puzzle of ever-shifting numbers. Taboo #11. Queuing culture and scarcity. Think you've been in a long queue before? In Venezuela, queuing can become a full-time activity. When everyday items like flour, cooking oil, or even toilet paper become scarce, you get lines wrapping around city blocks. People camp out or wake up at the crack of dawn just to buy essentials from state-run supermarkets, all to get them at regulated prices, assuming the goods even arrive. It's not just about waiting. There's an entire social dynamic at play. Cutting in line is basically a mortal sin. Someone might call you out or escalate things quickly. In extreme cases, there have been rumors of fistfights breaking out over a coveted spot in a queue for baby formula or medicine. Meanwhile, others have found ways around the system. They hire people to stand in line for them or bribe employees who control the distribution. A hidden aspect of this taboo is what they call bachaqueo, a slang term referring to people, often labeled bachaqueros, who buy goods at subsidized prices, then resell them at sky-high rates. That's how a $1 pack of rice can turn into $5 or more in the black market. The government tries to crack down on these resellers, but it's like a game of cat and mouse. Everyone's hustling to survive, which can turn a simple shopping trip into a day-long mission with questionable side deals. Filming or openly complaining at state-run stores can be risky. Some folks say they got harassed by security guards, or even briefly detained for disturbing the peace. If you're a foreigner, you might stand out even more. Let's say you whip out your phone to document the chaos. Someone might suspect you're a journalist or an agitator. Venezuelan friends might quietly warn you to put the phone away, to avoid trouble with authorities, or with the people in line who don't want to be on camera. This queuing phenomenon hits across social classes. Sure, wealthier people have alternate ways to obtain goods, like traveling abroad or paying a premium on the black market, but if you're average or lower income, the queue is your daily grind. Add scorching heat or rainy season conditions, and it's a tough scenario. In line, people bond, complain, joke around, and share updates on which store might have milk or chicken. It becomes its own society. What makes it taboo? You can talk about it, but acknowledging you have easy access to scarce products or that you regularly pay triple the price might offend those who can't afford such luxuries. Or, if you're too vocal about how ridiculous the situation is, you risk stepping on political landmines. People might ask if you're blaming the government or the economic war they often cite. So, best keep your thoughts mild, unless you're sure you're in sympathetic company. If you ever find yourself in Venezuela as a visitor and you see that line winding around the block, you'll get a taste of how scarcity shapes daily life. For many Venezuelans, it's not just an inconvenience, it's a constant reminder that something as simple as buying milk requires strategy, patience, and maybe a friend or two on the inside. Taboo #10. Discussing politics in public. Venezuela's politics are as heated as a midday sun on Margarita Island. On one side, you have the legacy of Hugo Chavez and his followers, often called Chavistas, who champion socialist ideals and speak of revolution and social equality. On the other side, you've got the opposition, who argue the government's policies have led to economic collapse and authoritarian tactics. It's a clash that runs so deep, it can split families, end friendships, and turn Sunday barbecues into war zones. Why is it taboo? Because in certain environments, especially if you're not sure where someone stands, openly criticizing the government or praising it can trigger immediate tension. Some Venezuelans might be extremely critical of the current leadership, blaming them for hyperinflation, rampant crime, and shortages. Others remain fiercely loyal, pointing to social programs that used to help the poor and the government's stand against foreign interference. Foreigners, in particular, walk a fine line. If you show up and start loudly declaring, "Maduro is the worst," or "Viva la revolución," you might get a range of reactions. Best case scenario, people politely direct you away from the topic. Worst case, you could attract attention from the wrong folks, like government supporters, or even authorities who perceive you as a potential agitator. You might also notice that Venezuelans themselves sometimes talk in code or use jokes to reference politics. They'll say something like, "El Señor de los Pájaros," the Lord of the Birds, or some other cryptic nickname, instead of naming a politician directly, especially in public. It's a coping mechanism, and also a subtle way to gauge if the other person is on the same wavelength. Stories abound about neighbors who stopped speaking because one put up a pro-government banner and the other opposed it. Some parents discourage their kids from discussing political topics at school, worried they might say the wrong thing in front of the wrong teacher. Meanwhile, social media can feel like a minefield. Post something critical of the government, and you might get flagged, trolled, or even threatened. Remember, Venezuelans are highly politicized, thanks to years of intense campaigning, speeches broadcast everywhere, and the dramatic changes that swept through the country. It's not like small talk about the weather. Politics is personal, emotional, and can be divisive. So if you're just passing through, it might be wise to tread lightly. Ask questions rather than make bold statements. People might open up if they trust you, but you need to earn that trust first. Blurting out your opinions on day one? That's a recipe for awkward silences, or worse. Consider yourself warned. In Venezuela, the moment politica hits the conversation, the vibe can shift faster than you can say, "Simón Bolívar." Approach it with respect, or skip it altogether if you're not ready for a passionate debate that might test your Spanish skills and your diplomatic finesse. Taboo hash. 9. The misconception of safety, navigating danger zones. Let's not sugarcoat it. Parts of Venezuela can be dangerous. The country has dealt with high crime rates, especially in big cities like Caracas. Muggings, carjackings, and armed robberies are frequent in certain neighborhoods. That said, not every corner is a war zone, and many Venezuelans go about their daily lives with a mix of caution and street smarts. The taboo? Talking about crime as if it's the only thing that defines the country, or conversely, acting like there's no risk at all. Locals have developed a sixth sense for staying safe. They might avoid wearing fancy watches or jewelry. They'll keep their phone hidden until they're in a secure spot. Driving with windows rolled up and doors locked is common. Some folks won't even stop at red lights in high crime areas late at night, out of fear of being carjacked. It's that real, but they don't necessarily want foreigners dramatizing the situation. Sure, the risk is there, but Venezuelans are proud of their country and get annoyed if visitors only harp on the danger factor. If you ask a local which neighborhoods to avoid, you might get a gentle, "Measure no vayas allá," better not go there. People prefer indirect warnings. Shouting, "That area is crawling with criminals," is considered in poor taste. It feeds negative stereotypes that many Venezuelans resent. At the same time, they don't want you waltzing around obliviously, so they'll drop hints. "Keep your wallet in your front pocket," or "Let's not walk after dark around this block." One interesting rumor is the Buenos Dias rule. Some say that in rough neighborhoods, you still greet people politely, "Buenos dias, vecino," good morning, neighbor, to show respect. Allegedly, it helps maintain a sense of community and can even keep you from being targeted. That might be anecdotal, but it highlights the culture's emphasis on manners, even in tough places. Armed robberies or kidnappings can happen quickly. Express kidnappings, for instance, involve criminals forcing you to withdraw money from an ATM. This is why flashing wealth is a no-go. If you enter a fancy cafe with a shiny laptop, iPhone, and gold watch, you might as well wear a neon sign that says, "Rob me." Locals might quietly cringe because they know you're painting yourself as a target. For outsiders, the tricky part is balancing caution with curiosity. You want to explore, meet people, and soak in the culture, but you can't do it naively. This is where Venezuelans might roll their eyes if you treat them as your personal security guides, bombarding them with fear-laced questions. The taboo emerges if you treat the entire country as though it's a giant crime ring, or if you act smugly unafraid, ignoring local advice. Bottom line, Venezuela's safety situation is complicated. People survive by staying alert and trusting their gut. Recognizing the issue without making it your entire perspective is key, and if a Venezuelan friend suggests you skip a particular neighborhood or avoid pulling out your phone in the middle of the street, do yourself a favor, listen. It's not paranoia, it's lived experience. Taboo hash. 8. Social etiquette and courtesy overdrive. Venezuelans are generally known for their warmth and friendliness. You might get greeted with hugs, cheek kisses, and an onslaught of personal questions within 5 minutes of meeting someone. Where are you from? Do you like it here? How is your family? That's normal. It's their way of saying, "You're welcome in my space." But hidden in that sweetness are some unspoken etiquette rules you really don't want to mess up. First off, greetings. If you walk into a room full of Venezuelans and don't greet each person, yes, each person, get ready for some serious side-eye. A quick "Hola a todos," hello everyone, might not cut it. People expect individual acknowledgement. At a party, you might see a newcomer making the rounds, cheek kissing or handshake by handshake, even if the place is crowded. Missing someone can come off as snobby or disrespectful. Then there's the matter of offering coffee or drinks. If you visit a Venezuelan home, your host will probably offer you coffee, water, or a small snack. Politely refusing every single offer might offend them. While it's okay to turn things down if you truly can't have them, show some appreciation. Maybe accept a little coffee if it's within your diet. The act of sharing is a big deal. People see it as an expression of kindness. Not indulging at all can be interpreted as standoffish. Another weird faux pas, ignoring personal questions. Venezuelans might ask about your marital status, your job, your finances, even your romantic life, right off the bat. In some cultures, that's borderline rude. Here, it's just curiosity, part of forging a bond. If you clam up or say, "That's private," they might take it as you being uninterested or aloof. Instead, try to laugh it off or give a gentle, polite response. They're not prying to judge you, they're making conversation. Oh, and be ready for interruptions. Venezuelans love to talk, loudly, passionately, and sometimes all at once. A dinner table conversation might sound like everyone is yelling, but that's just the normal volume. Jump in if you want to share a story. Waiting for a silent gap might mean you never get to speak. What's taboo here is acting too distant or cold. If you skip the small talk and get straight to business, especially in a casual setting, people might see you as rude. They appreciate a bit of personal chit-chat before diving into topics. Also, complaining about the noise or the affectionate touches, like repeated cheek kisses or a friend leaning on you while chatting, can come across as ungrateful. You're in their space now, so adapt or risk being labeled the standoffish foreigner. This courtesy overdrive extends to goodbyes too. You don't just vanish. You might say farewell to each person individually, often with another kiss or hug. Then you linger in the doorway for another mini chat. Yes, Venezuelans invented the "we should get going. Oh wait, another story" phenomenon. Don't fight it. Embrace the extended goodbye, or you'll be spotted as an outsider who escaped without a proper farewell. In short, Venezuelan social etiquette is a sweet, occasionally overwhelming dance of hugs, kisses, and personal queries. Once you get the hang of it, you'll realize it's a reflection of how open-hearted they can be. Just don't try to shorten the process or treat it like a business handshake. In their eyes, that's just no fun. Taboo #7. Beauty pageant obsession. You've probably heard that Venezuela is a powerhouse in international beauty pageants. Miss Universe, Miss World. Venezuelans dominate those contests like it's a national sport. It's so ingrained that many girls grow up dreaming of being the next Miss Venezuela, undergoing strict diets, catwalk training, and even plastic surgery if needed. Yes, plastic surgery can start young, and it's not unusual to hear about families saving up for a nose job or other procedures to give their daughter a competitive edge. On pageant night, families gather around the TV like they would for a World Cup final. They critique the contestants' gowns, posture, makeup, and question-answer segments. Some reality shows follow these aspiring beauty queens, showing them endure intense grooming, weigh-ins, and etiquette lessons. While some see it as glamorous, others see it as borderline obsession, fueling unrealistic body standards. The taboo? Criticize this culture too harshly, and you might upset a lot of people. Sure, some Venezuelans are tired of the pageant mania, especially amid economic hardships. They wonder why so much effort goes into something so superficial. But others see pageants as a proud national tradition, a point of unity, and a way to keep national morale high. After all, if you're dealing with daily economic stress, cheering on our girl in Miss Universe might be a welcome distraction. Moreover, the industry has rumors swirling around it. Questionable sponsorship deals, alleged favoritism by pageant directors, and hush-hush controversies about how some contestants afford lavish wardrobes. None of that dampens the excitement, though. Pageants remain huge. Even local pageants in towns or universities get massive attendance, with sponsors and communities rallying behind contestants. Another offshoot taboo is that not everyone can openly admit they find the pageant culture problematic. Younger, progressive-minded Venezuelans might call it out for objectifying women, but older generations might be offended by that lack of respect for tradition. Some families practically raise their daughters to excel in Miss School, teaching them how to walk with books on their heads, giving them special diets, or encouraging them to skip certain childhood joys in the name of poise. If you're a visitor, treading carefully is wise. If someone excitedly invites you to watch a pageant night, shrugging and saying, "That's silly and shallow," won't win you friends. It's better to show interest or at least polite curiosity. Ask about the background, the training, or the emotional journey. People might open up and admit it's both a source of national pride and something that can be over the top. Whatever your stance, understand that in Venezuela, being critical about the pageant phenomenon can be taken personally. For many, it's more than a show. It's a chunk of cultural identity. Love it or hate it, you can't ignore that beauty pageants are deeply woven into the Venezuelan psyche, shaping everything from TV schedules to childhood dreams. Taboo hash 6. Unusual superstitions and folklore. The land of the mighty Orinoco River and the mystical Taboos is also home to a treasure trove of spooky legends. You'll hear about El Silbón, a ghostly figure said to roam the llanos, plains, at night, whistling a haunting tune that signals death is near. Then there's La Sayona, a vengeful spirit who punishes unfaithful men. These aren't just silly campfire stories. Some Venezuelans take them seriously, passing them down through generations. A big no-no is making fun of these tales in front of someone who believes them. Sure, younger city dwellers might laugh it off, but plenty of rural communities hold these legends sacred. They might tell you about a cousin who heard the whistle of El Silbón on a stormy night, or a friend's uncle who swears he saw La Sayona while driving on an isolated road. Treat those stories with respect. Laughing too hard could be seen as dismissing local heritage. Locals also talk about certain taboo behaviors tied to these legends. For example, some say you shouldn't whistle at night in the plains, or you risk attracting El Silbón. Another rumor says never to pick up a crying woman on the highway at night because she might be La Llorona, a variant of the crying ghost mother that also appears in Mexican lore. Real or not, these legends are woven into the social fabric, and mocking them might label you as an outsider who doesn't respect tradition. Even in bustling cities, people might have mini superstitions. For instance, if you drop salt, you toss a bit over your shoulder to avoid bad luck. Or, if you see a black moth in your house, some believe it's an omen of death or misfortune. Is it universal? No. But it's common enough that you might see a local react strongly to everyday coincidences. Venezuelans sometimes celebrate these legends through cultural events, especially in smaller towns where they hold festivals or reenactments. Storytelling around bonfires is big. You'll meet folks who claim these energies intensify around certain times of the year, like Holy Week or near the end of October. Although Halloween isn't traditionally Venezuelan, younger generations have embraced it as an excuse for costume parties, sometimes blending it with local ghost stories. What's taboo here is labeling someone as ignorant or gullible for believing in these tales. Remember, legends often carry moral lessons, like El Silbón targeting drunkards or abusive men, so they serve as cautionary tales. Belittle them, and you're not just mocking a story, you're poking fun at a piece of cultural identity. Instead, ask questions. Show genuine interest in these supernatural anecdotes. You might unlock a treasure chest of eerie but fascinating lore that defines how many Venezuelans view the spirit world. Taboo hash 5. Food and dining quirks. Arepas, the heart and soul of Venezuela's culinary scene. If you haven't tried these cornmeal pockets stuffed with cheese, meat, beans, or avocado, have you really experienced the country? Venezuelans eat arepa morning, noon, and night, customizing them with endless fillings. However, there's an ongoing, friendly feud with neighboring Colombia over who invented the arepa and which version is best. Tread lightly when comparing them. If you say, Colombian arepas are better, you might spark a mini diplomatic crisis at the dinner table. Another staple is the halaka, a Christmas-time delicacy made of corn dough stuffed with a stew of meats, raisins, olives, and capers, wrapped in banana leaves and boiled. People get intensely proud of their family's halasa recipe. Insulting it or saying it's too salty or bland can be taken personally. Some families host big halacadas, where everyone gathers to make a giant batch for the holidays. Criticizing an abuela's halaca is borderline sacrilege. Just grin and say, "Qué rico," how delicious. It's also common courtesy to share. For instance, if you're at a table with a variety of dishes, you might hear, "Pruébalo, pruébalo," try it, try it. Turning down every offer can be interpreted as you disliking their food, or worse, you disliking them. Meanwhile, finishing everything on your plate is often seen as polite. But if you do see something questionable, like some families eat weird fish heads or unusual cuts of meat, be discreet. Don't go, "Ew, that's gross." Venezuelans take pride in using every part of the animal or fish. And let's not forget the arepa wars rumor. Venezuelans will staunchly claim their arepas are superior. fluffier, more flavorful, better fillings. They might gently tease Colombian arepas for being plain or too thin. But do keep in mind that some Colombian folks living in Venezuela have their own spin, leading to playful banter. It's not an actual war, of course, but the passion is real. You can witness heated debates about which country's arepas have more historical authenticity, or which style is tastier. Drinks-wise, you'll see a lot of fresh juices: mango, passion fruit, guava. Venezuelans love their sweet juices cold, sometimes so sugary it's like dessert. If you prefer less sugar, you might have to specifically request sin azúcar or con poca azúcar, no sugar or little sugar. Also, coffee is a big deal. A small, strong cup of coffee is common any time of day. Don't be shocked if people take in 5 or 6 cups daily. If a Venezuelan offers you coffee at their house, refusing might be interpreted as a slight, so either accept graciously or come up with a gentle excuse. One taboo you should avoid: messing with someone's portion or joking about their weight while they eat. Body shaming is frowned upon, especially in a culture where food is cherished. Jokingly calling someone gordito, chubby, might be acceptable among close friends, but as a foreigner, stepping into that territory is risky. People also love to comment on how much you're eating. Wow, you're on your 3rd arepa? But it's generally in good fun. Just laugh it off or declare, "Está muy bueno." It's too good. All in all, Venezuelan cuisine is a point of pride, cultural identity, and communal bonding. Show respect, be curious, and don't be afraid to try new flavors. Just don't get into the center of a Venezuelan-Colombian arepa debate, unless you're prepared for a hearty back and forth about which side is best. Taboo #4: Petroleum Pride versus Economic Struggle. Venezuela sits on one of the largest proven oil reserves in the world. For decades, the country raked in petrodollars, funding lavish public projects and boosting living standards. There was a time when Venezuelans felt unstoppable. Low gas prices, modern highways, bustling nightlife, and a strong currency to boot. People called it Saudi America, comparing it to oil-rich Saudi Arabia. Then things took a sharp turn, culminating in the economic mess we see today. The taboo? Mentioning how the oil party ended can rub locals the wrong way, especially if it sounds like gloating or scolding. Some will blame government mismanagement, corruption, or a global drop in oil prices. Others say external sanctions or sabotage crippled the industry. Whichever angle, it's a sensitive topic. People remember the good old days with nostalgia, but also carry a sense of betrayal that it all fell apart. Oil workers or older generations who lived through the boom might still show fierce pride in PDVSA, the state oil company, and in Venezuelan resource wealth. They'll recall when a tank of gas cost pennies. Actually, it still might, if you can find a station that sells it at the official subsidized rate. The twist is that despite the near-free gas policy, shortages sometimes make lines for fuel as long as those for groceries. It's a surreal situation. Another ironic scenario. At times, you'll hear about Venezuelans struggling to get gas in a country that's swimming in oil. This clash can be deeply embarrassing for some citizens. Bringing it up in a mocking tone might anger them. They'll respond, "We're more than just oil. We have incredible agriculture, tourism potential, and cultural assets." And they're not wrong. Yet the overshadowing presence of oil in the economy is undeniable. Some travelers note that older Venezuelans talk about the Gran Venezuela era, a time of shiny shopping malls, cars for everyone, and trips abroad. Younger folks might see it as a myth, something they've never experienced. This generational divide can spark arguments, seniors longing for the past versus youth dealing with the new normal. That's part of why it's taboo. Pointing out how that golden era is gone might be taken as rubbing salt in a wound. No matter which side you lean toward, approach the subject of oil with empathy. While some are open to discussing how corruption and poor planning squandered the windfall, others are still hopeful that a new approach can turn the tide. Venezuelans might simultaneously bemoan the losses and remain optimistic about an oil rebound. It's a contradictory place, proud of what black gold once afforded them, yet weighed down by the heavy cost of over-reliance on a single resource. Taboo #3: Social class tensions and Cifrino verses. 2 key stereotypes. Venezuela is a land of stark contrasts. You've got plush neighborhoods with high-rise condos and fancy SUVs, and then just a few blocks away, you might find informal settlements. The divide between wealth and poverty is huge, and local slang reflects that. Two infamous words, cifrino and tuki. Think of cifrino as your preppy, upper-class snob, while tuki might refer to someone from the rougher neighborhoods with a streetwise style. Of course, these labels are crude stereotypes, but they are widely understood. Using these words in public can be a tightrope walk. Call someone cifrino, and you're basically saying they're a spoiled brat who flashes their wealth. Call them tuki, and you imply they're uncultured or from a dangerous barrio. That's a fast way to start an argument, or worse. Some folks wear the labels as a badge of pride, flipping the insult into an identity. But in general, tossing these terms around can lead to heated conversations about classism and prejudice. The taboo? Pretending class divisions don't exist, or conversely, shoving them in people's faces. If you're from a well-to-do family, bragging about expensive beach trips or overseas shopping sprees can sound tone-deaf. Meanwhile, if you're from a humble background, publicly mocking the wealthy can make you look resentful. The tension is real. A cifrino might never set foot in a tuki neighborhood, and a tuki might find upper-class enclaves unwelcoming or elitist. This social fracture also seeps into nightlife. Certain clubs or parties might quietly filter out the wrong crowd, enforcing dress codes that exclude typical tuki style. On the flip side, some urban clubs wear the tuki label proudly, blasting reggaeton and trap music, attracting a younger, more working-class crowd. Venezuelans navigate these scenes with caution, aware that crossing into the other side's turf can be awkward if you don't adapt. Slang evolves. Younger people use fino or chever to mean cool, but the undertone of class-based tension remains. Even in the media, comedic skits poke fun at the cifrino's accent or the tuki's flamboyant dancing, but behind the laughs is a commentary on inequality. If you're an outsider, you might not fully catch the nuance at first. Someone might say, "Ese tipo es bien cifrino," and you think it's just a casual label. It's more loaded than that. What makes it taboo? The sheer sensitivity around class-based prejudice. Venezuela has endured massive economic shifts, so a once cifrino family might have lost much of their wealth, or a tuki might have hustled into affluence. Stereotypes fail to capture these dynamic stories. When you bring it up, or use those terms, you could offend people who already feel the social fabric is torn. Approach with curiosity, not condemnation. If a local friend uses the term, you can ask them to explain, but be careful about tossing it around yourself. You don't want to inadvertently insult half the room. Taboo hash. 2. Cross-border migration and identity. In the last several years, Venezuela experienced one of the largest mass migrations in modern Latin American history. Millions left the country, trekking across borders on foot, flying out with limited luggage, or piling into cars with extended families, all seeking better opportunities abroad. Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Chile, Spain, and the US have become new homes for Venezuelans. This exodus is a raw topic. Some families are scattered across continents, and entire neighborhoods feel half empty. It's a difficult conversation. On one hand, those who left might share harrowing stories, limited job opportunities, empty supermarket shelves, or fear of political persecution. On the other hand, those who stayed might feel abandoned, or they might resent the idea that leaving is the only solution. Some have relatives overseas who send remittances, money transfers, which can be a lifesaver, but also a source of tension. You left, and now you can afford fancy stuff while we're stuck here. Calling this exodus a brain drain might also sting. Yes, many professionals, doctors, engineers, teachers have left, which affects public services in Venezuela. People talk about hospitals without enough staff or schools lacking qualified instructors. But the phrase can imply that those who remain aren't valuable. That's an unspoken insult. Another taboo angle, foreigners offering broad statements like, "Why don't people just leave if it's so bad?" That can anger Venezuelans who are deeply tied to their homeland. Not everyone can afford to uproot their lives, and many feel a strong sense of patriotic or familial duty to stay. Telling them to just go seems dismissive of the real struggles and emotional bonds. Meanwhile, Venezuelan migrants living abroad often face stereotypes. Oh, you're from that crisis country. Or they get labeled as job stealers or scapegoats for rising crime in neighboring nations. It's a tough spot. Criticizing Venezuela from outside can come across as betrayal, especially if they post something negative on social media and their friends or family at home feel offended. Some Venezuelans who return after failing to adapt abroad face another layer of stigma. They're seen as having given up on the dream of a better life. Then, there are those who come back with money saved, building houses or starting businesses, sometimes sparking jealousy. The entire migration phenomenon is riddled with complexities, heartbreak, hope, and suspicion. This is why discussing the mass exodus or cross-border identity can get really personal. People's reasons for leaving or staying vary wildly. If you're a traveler or newcomer, you might sense the tension in how folks tiptoe around the subject. They might avoid talking about siblings who left or might tear up when describing the last family reunion. So, if you ask, do it gently, and understand that it's not a black and white issue of all good or all bad. For many, it's an ongoing emotional roller coaster with no clear end in sight. Taboo #1: National pride in criticizing Venezuela from the outside. Finally, we come to one of the biggest taboos: outsiders trash-talking Venezuela in a broad, dismissive way. Yes, Venezuelans are well aware of the country's problems: economic meltdown, political unrest, crime, scarcity. But it's one thing for them to complain among themselves, and another thing entirely for a foreigner to swoop in and say, "Wow, this place is a mess." Despite all the hardships, most Venezuelans remain fiercely proud of their homeland: the mesmerizing nature, the rich cultural traditions, the warm community spirit. If you're a visitor, you might find yourself shocked by certain realities: empty supermarket shelves, blackouts, or endless lines for gas. Expressing genuine curiosity or concern is often welcome, but crossing over into a tone of contempt can spark defensiveness. "You have no idea," they might say. "We're the ones living this." They might point to the resilience of local communities, the unstoppable humor people maintain despite adversity, or the stunning natural wonders like Canaima National Park or the Los Roques Archipelago that continue to shine regardless of politics. Online or in person, Venezuelans can get offended if you treat their country like a cautionary tale or a meme. Some foreigners post selfies with crumbling infrastructure in the background, trying to gain social media clout. That's a big no. It's exploitative and disrespectful, ignoring the day-to-day struggles of people who don't have the luxury of leaving. Another example: a travel vlogger might sensationalize crime scenes for clicks, overshadowing the kindness they experienced with local families who offered them meals or guided tours for free. As a Venezuelan might say, "If you only look for the ugly, you'll miss the beautiful." This also ties into diaspora discussions. A Venezuelan living abroad might vent about how messy things have gotten back home, but if someone else, especially a non-Venezuelan, chimes in too aggressively, it can turn sour. It's like sibling dynamics. I can insult my sibling all day, but if you do it, we're going to have a problem. At the core, Venezuelans value their identity, from the folklore and music to the sense of humor that helps them cope. They'll criticize the government, the economy, or each other. But bring in an outsider who lumps them into cliches, and you'll quickly see that protective side. If you truly want to understand the place, show empathy. Ask about their memories, their hopes. They might open up about childhood trips to the beach, neighborhood parties that lasted till dawn, or the sense of unity when times were good. That's the part of Venezuela they hold dear, even if daily life seems chaotic now. So, you can discuss the problems, they're obvious. Just don't trash the whole country like it's a lost cause. Venezuelans have enough negativity to deal with. If you find the silver linings or express sincere admiration for what still works, the food, the landscapes, the unstoppable spirit, you'll discover that pride is not just a facade. It's the glue that keeps people going, fueling hope for a future beyond the headlines. Venezuela might look like a puzzle of contrasts: stunning beaches alongside gas station lines, vibrant music echoing through neighborhoods coping with blackouts, and warm, affectionate people living under the shadow of political tension. These 12 taboos peel back the layers of everyday life, showing that it's not just a matter of right versus wrong or good versus bad. It's a land of resilience, complicated by a roller coaster economy, haunted by folklore, and lifted by traditions of togetherness and hospitality. We've touched on everything from the currency crisis and endless queues to the hush-hush around political chatter, extreme beauty pageant culture, and class divides. Underscoring it all is a deep sense of national pride, shaped by epic landscapes and a collective memory of better days. The social fabric may be frayed, but it's held together by a shared desire to see Venezuela regain its footing, whether through reimagined policies, grassroots community efforts, or simply by keeping the flame of optimism alive. For visitors, navigating these taboos involves empathy and open-mindedness. The country's not a monolith. Each region, family, and individual has a unique take on how to cope. Some cling to old traditions like pageants or ghost stories, while others turn to foreign currency or new beginnings abroad. Yet they all share that intangible Venezuelan flair, an upbeat spirit, a readiness to greet you with a warm smile, and a refusal to let adversity kill their sense of humor. If there's one takeaway, it's this: Venezuela is more than its headlines. Yes, it faces real struggles, and yes, you'll need caution and humility to explore it. But it's also brimming with human warmth, unwavering creativity, and a cultural heritage that refuses to be snuffed out. These taboos aren't meant to scare you away. They're glimpses into a richly layered society that's worth getting to know. If you're ready to handle the complexities, and most importantly, show respect to the people who call it home. Now that we've journeyed through these 12 Venezuelan taboos, tell us, did any of them catch you by surprise? Share your thoughts or personal stories in the comments below. Have you visited Venezuela? What was your experience with currency hurdles, social etiquette, or that legendary arepa debate? We'd love to hear your take. If you found this exploration enlightening, give this video a like and hit that subscribe button. Stick around for more deep dives into global culture and offbeat travel tips. Who knows, maybe our next video will tackle another place with unexpected customs that'll change how you see the world. Until then, stay curious and respectful out there, because every country has its hidden rules, and discovering them is half the adventure.